The Federation ship Eternal Harmony drifted through the darkness of space toward the blue and green planet that had puzzled scientists and diplomats for decades. Inside the observation deck, Senior Diplomat Krelvax pressed his 4 slender fingers against the viewing glass and watched Earth grow larger with each passing hour. "They call it home," said his assistant, a young female named Thesha who was reading from a data tablet. Such a simple word for such a strange world. Krelvax turned his elongated head toward her. His species, the Valorian, had served the Galactic Federation as diplomats and researchers for over 3,000 years. They were known for their patience, their careful study of other cultures, and their complete lack of creativity. Like most species in the Federation, the Valorian had evolved to solve problems through logic and established patterns. "Simple words seem to be a human specialty," Krelvax replied. "Their entire language is built on them, yet they twist and shape these simple words into poetry and songs and jokes. It makes no sense." Thesha nodded. "The High Council is most interested in this ability. They believe it might explain why humans advanced so quickly after we made first contact." "Advanced is perhaps too gentle a word," Krelvax said. He turned back to the window. "In 50 years, they went from burning fossil fuels to building ships that rival our own. They took our technology and improved it. They found uses for things we never imagined." The Eternal Harmony shuddered slightly as it entered Earth's atmosphere. Krelvax had made this journey 7 times before, each visit revealing something new and confusing about the humans. His mission this time was clear but difficult. The High Council wanted him to study human creativity, to understand it, and if possible, to find a way to teach it to other Federation species. The ship landed at the International Diplomatic Center in Geneva, Switzerland. It was a massive building made of glass and steel, designed by human architects who had somehow made cold materials feel warm and welcoming. Krelvax still did not understand how they had done this. A delegation of humans waited at the landing pad. At the front stood Ambassador Chen, a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. Krelvax had worked with her before and found her both frustrating and fascinating. "Senior Diplomat Krelvax," she said, extending her hand in the human greeting gesture. "Welcome back to Earth." Krelvax touched her hand briefly with his fingers, still uncomfortable with the custom after all these years. "Ambassador Chen, the Federation thanks you for receiving us." "Of course," she said with a smile. "Though I admit we are curious about this visit. Your message said you wish to study human creativity and innovation. That is a broad topic." "It is," Krelvax agreed. "But the High Council believes it is essential. Your species has accomplished in decades what took others thousands of years. We wish to understand why." Ambassador Chen's smile grew wider. "That might take more than one visit, Senior Diplomat, but we are happy to help. We have prepared a schedule of meetings, demonstrations, and visits to various facilities. I hope you brought comfortable shoes." Krelvax looked down at his feet, which had no shoes. "I do not wear shoes, Ambassador." She laughed, and Krelvax added this to his list of confusing human behaviors. Laughter seemed to serve many purposes among humans, and he could never quite predict when it would happen. The first stop on their tour was a human art museum. Krelvax walked through halls filled with paintings, sculptures, and strange objects that seemed to serve no practical purpose. Thesha recorded everything with her scanner, her eyes wide with confusion. "What is the function of this?" she asked, pointing at a sculpture of twisted metal and broken glass. Their human guide, a young man named Marcus, smiled. "It does not have a function. It is art. It exists to make people feel things." "Feel what things?" Thesha asked. Marcus shrugged. "Different things for different people. Some might feel sadness. Others might feel wonder. Some might feel angry. The artist wanted to show the chaos of modern life, the way things break apart and come together in unexpected ways." Krelvax studied the sculpture carefully. To him it looked like garbage, but he noticed that the human visitors walking past would stop and stare at it, their faces showing various emotions. Some smiled, some frowned. One elderly woman stood in front of it for nearly 10 minutes, tears slowly falling down her cheeks. "Why does she cry?" Krelvax asked quietly. Marcus looked at the woman and his voice became soft. "I do not know. Perhaps she lost someone. Perhaps the sculpture reminds her of something painful, Or perhaps it reminds her of something beautiful that is now gone. Krelvax watched the woman leave, wiping her eyes with a small piece of cloth. In 3,000 years of diplomatic service, the Valorian had never created anything that could make someone cry. They had never wanted to. Emotions were seen as obstacles to clear thinking, not as goals to be achieved. After the museum, they visited a human university. Krelvax sat in the back of a classroom and watched young humans learn about something called creative writing. The professor, an old man with a white beard, was asking his students to write a story about a door. "Just a door?" one student asked. "Just a door," the professor said. "But think about what doors mean. They separate and connect. They hide and reveal. A door can be an ending or a beginning. Now write." The students began typing on their devices, and Krelvax watched in amazement as they produced completely different stories from the same simple idea. One student wrote about a child afraid to open a door to a dark basement. Another wrote about an old man returning to his childhood home and finding the door unchanged after 60 years. A third wrote about an alien species that had no concept of doors and did not understand why humans divided their spaces. Krelvax leaned over to Thesha. "How is this possible? They all received the same instruction, yet they produced entirely different results." Thesha shook her head. "It does not follow any pattern I can analyze. In Valorian education, the same input produces the same output. That is how learning works." "Not for humans, apparently," Krelvax said. After the class, the professor approached them. "I am Professor Williams. Ambassador Chen told me you are here to study human creativity. I am afraid you will be disappointed." "Why?" Krelvax asked. "Because creativity cannot be studied like a chemical reaction or a mathematical formula," Professor Williams said. "It is not a thing we have. It is a thing we do. It is a process, not an object." Krelvax considered this. Then how does one learn to be creative? Professor Williams smiled. "By making mistakes, by playing, by asking questions that have no answers, by being willing to look foolish. Creativity is born from chaos, senior diplomat. It is what happens when a mind refuses to follow the obvious path." That night, Krelvax sat in his quarters aboard the Eternal Harmony and reviewed his notes. He had hundreds of observations but no conclusions. Human creativity remained a mystery, something he could see but not understand. It was like trying to hold water in his fingers. The more he grasped, the more it slipped away. Thesha entered his room with a data tablet. "I have found something interesting in the historical archives. It appears that humans were not always creative. Before the development of their large brains, they were simple creatures, no different from other animals on their planet." Krelvax took the tablet and read. "So creativity evolved. It was not always part of them." "Correct," Thesha said. "It developed as a survival mechanism. Their planet was harsh, with changing climates and dangerous predators. They had to adapt, to improvise, to find new solutions to constant problems. Creativity was how they survived when strength and speed were not enough." Krelvax put down the tablet and stared out the window at the lights of Geneva below. Perhaps that was the answer. Perhaps creativity was not a gift but a scar, a mark left by struggle and suffering. The Federation species had evolved on gentler worlds with fewer challenges. They had never needed to invent new solutions because the old ones always worked. But humans had grown up in chaos, and chaos had taught them to create. The next morning, Ambassador Chen led them to a facility that she said would show them human innovation in action. It was a large building filled with young humans working on strange machines and stranger ideas. Some were building flying devices. Others were creating new types of food. One group was trying to teach a computer to write poetry. "This is a startup incubator," Ambassador Chen explained. "A place where people come to turn ideas into reality. Most of these projects will fail, perhaps 9 out of 10, but the ones that succeed will change the world." Krelvax found this deeply confusing. You invest resources in projects that will most likely fail. That is highly inefficient. Ambassador Chen nodded. "Yes, it is, by your standards, but we have learned that failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of success. Every failure teaches something. Every mistake opens a new door." They stopped in front of a young woman who was working on a device that seemed to grow plants without soil or water. She looked up and grinned at them. "Visitors from the stars," she said. "Cool, want to see something amazing." Without waiting for an answer, she pressed a button. The device hummed, and a small green sprout pushed up from an empty container. It grew before their eyes, spreading leaves and reaching toward the light. "I call it the life box," the woman said proudly. "It uses a combination of light frequencies and sound waves to stimulate plant growth. I got the idea from watching my grandmother sing to her garden." Thesha scanned the device. "This technology does not exist in our databases. How long have you been working on it?" "About 8 months, the woman said. "Though the first 6 months were mostly failures, I nearly gave up a dozen times." "But you did not give up," Krelvex said. "Why?" The woman thought about this. "Because I wanted to feed people. There are still hungry people in the world, you know, and I thought maybe, just maybe, I could help. The failures hurt, but the goal was worth the pain." Krelvax added this to his notes. Humans did not just create for the sake of creating. They created to solve problems, to help others, to make their world better. Their creativity was not random chaos. It was directed chaos, aimed at a purpose. As they continued through the facility, Krelvax began to see a pattern. Every inventor, every creator, every innovator was trying to solve a problem. Some problems were big, like hunger and disease. Others were small, like making a better chair or a tastier drink. But all of them were driven by the same basic impulse: to make things better than they were. By the end of the day, Krelvax felt he was beginning to understand something important. Human creativity was not a mysterious power or a random gift. It was a response to need, a tool for survival that had grown into something much larger. Humans created because they had to, because their world demanded it, and because they believed things could always be improved. But understanding was not enough. The High Council wanted more. They wanted to know if this creativity could be taught to other species. They wanted to unlock the secrets of human innovation and spread it across the Federation. Krelvax was not sure this was possible. You could not teach someone to need something they had never needed before. You could not give someone a history of struggle and survival. You could not create the chaos that had shaped the human mind. But perhaps there was another way. Perhaps, instead of trying to copy human creativity, the Federation could learn to work with it. Humans were becoming more important in galactic affairs every year. Their ships were faster, their weapons were stronger, and their ideas were changing everything they touched. Maybe the answer was not to study humans from afar, but to embrace them as partners. To let their creativity mix with Federation knowledge and experience. To combine the old wisdom of ancient species with the wild innovation of these strange newcomers. Krelvax smiled, surprising himself. He had never smiled before, but something about this idea felt right, felt like the beginning of something new and exciting. He was starting to think like a human, and that thought did not frighten him as much as it should have. The second week of his mission took Krelvax to a place humans called Silicon Valley. It was a region in the western part of North America where many of the most important human inventions had been born. The land itself was unremarkable, dry hills and flat plains, but what happened in the buildings that covered it had changed the entire galaxy. Ambassador Chen introduced him to a human named Dr. Sarah Mitchell, who ran a research facility dedicated to studying innovation itself. She was a tall woman with bright eyes and wild hair that seemed to have a life of its own. "So you want to understand how humans create," she said, leading them through corridors filled with strange equipment. "Good luck with that. We have been trying to figure it out ourselves for centuries." "But you must have some understanding," Krelvax said. "You have achieved so much." Dr. Mitchell laughed. "We have achieved a lot by not understanding, actually. Some of our greatest inventions came from accidents, mistakes, or pure stubbornness. The process is messy. It is not elegant or logical. It is very human." She led them into a large room filled with screens and sensors. In the center was a comfortable chair surrounded by monitoring equipment. "This is our creativity lab," she explained. "We bring people here and watch their brains while they solve problems. We have learned some interesting things." She showed them recordings of human brains at work. The images were colorful and complex, showing different areas lighting up and connecting in unexpected patterns. "When a human solves a simple logic problem, their brain looks like this," Dr. Mitchell said, pointing to an image that showed activity in one specific region. Ordered, focused, efficient, just like your brains, I imagine. She switched to another image. But when a human has a creative insight, their brain looks like this. Krelvax stared at the new image. It was chaos. Dozens of different brain regions were active at once, connecting and disconnecting in patterns that seemed almost random. It looked like a storm inside the human head. This is what creativity looks like, Dr. Mitchell said. It is the brain making connections that should not exist. It is logic and emotion and memory and imagination all working together at once. It is beautiful and terrifying. Thesha was taking detailed notes. Can this activity be induced? Can you make a brain do this on purpose? Sometimes, Dr. Mitchell admitted. We have found that certain conditions help, being relaxed but alert, having access to diverse information, not being afraid of failure, but we cannot force it to happen. Creativity is like a wild animal. You can create the right environment for it, but you cannot control when it will appear. Krelvax thought about this for a long time. The Valorian brain was nothing like what he had seen on those screens. His people thought in straight lines, from problem to solution to result. They never let different parts of their minds mix and interact in such chaotic ways. Perhaps that was why they had never created anything truly new. Their orderly minds were excellent at improving existing ideas, but terrible at imagining things that did not yet exist. The next day they visited a human music studio. Krelvax had heard human music before and found it confusing. It followed rules, then broke them. It created patterns, then destroyed them. It made him feel things he did not understand and could not name. The studio was run by a group of young humans who made what they called experimental music. They used strange instruments that Krelvax had never seen, along with computers and recording equipment. Music is mathematics, one of the musicians explained. He was a thin young man with tattoos covering his arms. But it is also emotion. The trick is finding the balance between order and chaos. He played something for them on his instrument, a complex piece that seemed to shift and change with every moment. Krelvax found himself swaying slightly to the rhythm, his body responding before his mind could analyze what was happening. You feel it, the musician said with a grin. That is good. Music is not meant to be understood, it is meant to be felt. But how do you create it? Krelvax asked. How do you know what notes to play? The musician shrugged. I do not always know. Sometimes I just play and see what happens. Sometimes I start with an idea, a feeling, an image in my head, and sometimes the music just comes from somewhere I cannot explain. This was the answer Krelvax kept hearing over and over again. Human creators did not fully understand their own process. They spoke of inspiration, of ideas coming from somewhere, of moments when everything just clicked into place. It was not scientific. It was not logical, but it worked. In the afternoon, Ambassador Chen took them to a hospital where human doctors were developing new treatments for diseases. The lead doctor, an elderly man named Dr. Patel, showed them his latest project. A new way to repair damaged hearts using a combination of living cells and tiny machines. The idea came to me in a dream, Dr. Patel said. I was struggling with the problem for months, getting nowhere. Then one night I dreamed of a spider building a web inside a broken vase, and when I woke up I knew exactly what to do. A dream? Thesha asked skeptically. You based a medical treatment on a dream. I based it on an insight that came to me in a dream, Dr. Patel corrected gently. The dream was not the answer. It was the way my unconscious mind showed me the answer it had been working on all along. Krelvax found this fascinating. Human minds continued to work even when they were sleeping, processing information and making connections in ways their conscious minds could not control. It was as if humans had two minds, one that followed rules and one that broke them, and creativity happened when these two minds worked together. That evening, Krelvax requested a meeting with Ambassador Chen in private. They met in her office, a comfortable room filled with books and artwork and strange objects from around the world. You have been quiet today, Ambassador Chen observed. Is something troubling you? I am beginning to think my mission is impossible, Krelvax admitted. The High Council wants me to understand human creativity so it can be taught to other species. But everything I have seen suggests that creativity cannot be taught. It must be experienced. It must be lived. Ambassador Chen poured 2 cups of tea, a human ritual that Krelvax had come to appreciate. Perhaps you are right, or perhaps you are looking at the problem the wrong way. What do you mean? She handed him a cup and sat down across from him. You have been trying to study creativity as an isolated thing, like it is a chemical compound you can break down into parts. But creativity is not separate from the person who creates. It is part of them. It is shaped by their history, their culture, their fears and hopes and dreams. Krelvax sipped the tea. It was warm and slightly bitter, with a sweetness underneath. Like so many human things, it was a combination of opposites. What you are really studying is not creativity, Ambassador Chen continued. It is humanity itself. Our creativity comes from who we are, from everything that has made us. The struggles, the triumphs, the failures, the loves, the losses, all of it goes into the creative fire. So to understand human creativity, I must understand humans, Krelvax said slowly. All of them, everything about them. Ambassador Chen smiled. Now you are beginning to see, and that understanding cannot come from study alone. It must come from connection, from friendship, from living among us and seeing the world through our eyes. Krelvax thought about this for a long time. The High Council had sent him to observe and analyze, to gather data and write reports. But data and reports would never capture what he had experienced in the past 2 weeks. The crying woman in the museum, the students writing their door stories, the inventor who wanted to feed the hungry, the musician who did not know where his music came from. These were not facts to be recorded. They were experiences to be shared. I have a suggestion, Ambassador Chen said. Stay longer, not as a diplomat but as a guest. Live among us for a year. Work with our artists and scientists and teachers. Let yourself be confused and frustrated and amazed. And at the end of that year, see what you have learned. The High Council would not approve, Krelvax said. They want results, not experiences. Then give them results, Ambassador Chen said. Tell them that understanding human creativity requires immersion, not observation. Tell them that the best way to learn is to participate. If they truly want to unlock our secrets, they must be willing to take the same risks we take every day. Krelvax finished his tea and set down the cup. He thought about his comfortable life on the Valorian homeworld, where everything was orderly and predictable and nothing ever changed. He thought about the chaos of Earth, where everything was messy and uncertain and new things appeared every day. For the first time in his long career, Krelvax wanted to do something unexpected. He wanted to take a risk. He wanted to see what would happen if he stopped studying humans from a distance and started living among them. It was, he realized, a creative thought, the first truly creative thought he had ever had. I will stay, he said, and I will learn. Ambassador Chen's smile was warm and genuine. Welcome to humanity, senior diplomat. I think you are going to find it very interesting. Thesha was less enthusiastic when Krelvax told her his decision. The High Council will be furious, she said. This is not what they sent us here to do. Perhaps not, Krelvax agreed. But it is what we need to do. You can return home and deliver our initial findings. I will stay and continue the research in a different way. Thesha looked at him with concern. You are changing, senior diplomat. I can see it in your eyes. These humans are affecting you. Yes, Krelvax said. They are, and I think that is exactly what needs to happen. The following months were unlike anything Krelvax had experienced in his 3,000 years of life. Ambassador Chen arranged for him to live in different places and work with different people, immersing him in the full range of human experience. He spent time in a small town in Japan, where an old man taught him the art of making pottery. The man worked slowly and carefully, shaping clay with his hands into bowls and cups and vases. He said very little, but Krelvax learned more from watching him than from 1,000 scientific papers. The old man made mistakes constantly. Sometimes the clay would collapse or crack. Sometimes the glaze would not turn out right, but he never seemed upset by these failures. He would simply start again, adjusting his approach slightly, learning from what had gone wrong. Perfection is not the goal, the old man said one day. Beauty is, and beauty often comes from imperfection. A crack in a bowl can be filled with gold, making it more precious than if it had never broken. Krelvax watched as the old man demonstrated this, repairing a broken cup with golden lacquer. The result was stunning, the gold lines like rivers across the surface, turning the broken cup into something unique and valuable. "This is a philosophy we call kintsugi," the old man explained. "Instead of hiding our breaks, we celebrate them. They are part of our history, part of who we are." Krelvax thought about his own people, who hid every flaw and presented only perfection to the world. They would never dream of celebrating a mistake, but perhaps that was why they never created anything truly new. They were too afraid of breaking to ever try. After Japan, he went to Brazil, where he lived with a community of musicians and dancers. They created art that involved the whole body, not just the mind. They moved to rhythms that seemed to come from the earth itself, their music flowing and changing like a living thing. Krelvax tried to dance with them and found it almost impossible. His Valorian body was not built for such movement, and his mind kept trying to analyze what he was doing instead of just doing it. "Stop thinking," one of the dancers told him. "Just feel, let the music move through you." It took weeks, but eventually Krelvax understood. He stopped trying to control his body and let it respond naturally to the sound. He was terrible at first, awkward and out of time, but slowly something changed. He began to move without thinking, to feel the rhythm in his bones. One night after hours of dancing, he realized he was laughing. Not the polite social laughter he had learned to fake, but real laughter coming from deep inside him. He did not know why he was laughing. He just knew that he felt alive in a way he never had before. This was what creativity felt like from the inside, he realized. This joy, this freedom, this willingness to look foolish and make mistakes and keep trying anyway. It was not about producing perfect results. It was about engaging fully with life, about saying yes to possibilities instead of no to risks. He sent regular reports back to the High Council, but they grew less satisfied with each one. They wanted formulas and methods, step-by-step instructions for producing creative individuals. Krelvax could not give them that. Instead, he described his experiences, his insights, his growing understanding of what made humans different. "Creativity is not a skill," he wrote in one report. "It is a way of being. It emerges from a willingness to fail, a tolerance for uncertainty, and a deep belief that things can be better than they are. These qualities cannot be programmed or taught in the traditional sense. They must be cultivated through experience and nurtured through culture." The High Council was not happy with this conclusion. They sent messages urging him to find more practical applications, to develop training programs or genetic modifications that could give other species human-like creativity. Krelvax refused. He was beginning to understand that some things could not be copied or transferred. Human creativity was inseparable from human experience, from the unique history and culture and biology of the species. To take creativity from humans and give it to others would be to misunderstand what creativity truly was. But there was another way forward, one that did not require copying but rather combining. Humans and other species could work together, each bringing their unique strengths to shared problems. The orderly thinking of the Valorian, the physical strength of the Korak, the mathematical genius of the Mindari, and the wild creativity of humans. Together, they could accomplish things that none could achieve alone. Krelvax began to develop this idea into a formal proposal. He called it the Creative Partnership Initiative. It would bring humans together with representatives from other Federation species on joint projects, allowing their different ways of thinking to mix and interact. He presented the idea to Ambassador Chen, who was immediately enthusiastic. "This is exactly what we need," she said. "Isolation benefits no one. The galaxy is full of problems that require multiple perspectives to solve." With her help, Krelvax developed the proposal further. They identified pilot projects that would test the concept, bringing together teams of humans and aliens to work on challenges like cleaning up polluted planets, developing new energy sources, and creating art that could be appreciated by multiple species. The High Council was skeptical but willing to try. They had invested too much in Krelvax's mission to abandon it now, and his arguments were persuasive. If creativity could not be copied, perhaps it could be shared. 6 months after leaving the Eternal Harmony, Krelvac stood before the first meeting of the Creative Partnership Initiative. The room was filled with beings from a dozen different species, including 20 humans selected for their exceptional creative abilities. "We are here to learn from each other," Krelvac said, speaking to the assembled group. "Not to copy or compete, but to combine. Each of you brings something unique to this room. Each of you sees the world in a way that no one else does. Together, we will attempt something that has never been done before. We will try to create." The first project was simple: design a garden that could be appreciated by all species represented in the room. This meant considering different sensory capabilities, different aesthetics, different relationships with nature. It was a puzzle with no obvious solution. At first, the group struggled. The aliens wanted to approach the problem systematically, dividing it into parts and solving each part separately. The humans wanted to brainstorm freely, throwing out ideas without worrying about whether they were practical. But slowly, something remarkable happened. The two approaches began to merge. The aliens provided structure and analysis, while the humans provided inspiration and imagination. Ideas bounced back and forth, changing and growing with each exchange. A Korak engineer suggested using crystals that changed color based on the emotions of viewers. A human artist proposed arranging these crystals in spiraling patterns that would create different effects when viewed from different angles. A Mindari mathematician calculated exactly how to position the spirals for maximum emotional impact, while a human musician suggested adding sound elements that would respond to movement. The final design was unlike anything any of them could have created alone. It was structured yet flowing, logical yet surprising, familiar yet completely new. It was the product of genuine collaboration, of minds working together across the vast gulf between species. "This is it," Krelvac whispered to Thesha, who had returned to Earth for the demonstration. "This is what creativity looks like when it spreads beyond a single species. This is what the Federation could become." Thesha studied the holographic model of the garden, her analytical mind working to understand what she was seeing. "It is remarkable," she admitted. "The humans have contributed elements that no Valorian would have imagined, but our contributions have given those elements form and structure." "Exactly," Krelvac said. "We need each other. The humans bring chaos and we bring order. Together we create beauty." The garden was built on a neutral planet, a place where species from across the Federation could come to experience it. Visitors arrived from hundreds of worlds, and all of them were moved by what they saw. The crystals shifted through colors that spoke to deep emotions, while the spiraling paths led each visitor on a journey that felt personal and unique. The Creative Partnership Initiative was declared a success, and the High Council authorized a major expansion of the program. Within a year, partnership teams were working on dozens of projects across the Federation. Some focused on technology, others on art, others on solving social problems. All of them were producing results that neither humans nor aliens could have achieved alone. Krelvac found himself at the center of this revolution, no longer just a diplomat or a researcher, but something new. He was a bridge between worlds, someone who understood both human creativity and alien order and could help them work together. The humans had a word for what he had become. They called him an ambassador, but not of nations or species. He was an ambassador of ideas, helping thoughts travel from one mind to another across the vast distances of culture and biology. It was, he realized, the most creative thing he had ever done, and he had done it by letting go of his Valorian need to understand everything before acting. He had taken a risk, embraced uncertainty, and allowed himself to be changed by the experience. The old Krelvac, the careful diplomat who observed without engaging, would never have imagined such a life. But that Krelvac had died somewhere on his journey through human culture, replaced by someone new and strange and wonderful. In the end, Krelvac understood that his mission had succeeded beyond anything the High Council could have hoped for. He had not figured out how to copy human creativity or transfer it to other species. He had found something better, a way to multiply it, to amplify it, to let it grow and spread through cooperation and partnership. Humanity's creativity was not a threat to be contained or a secret to be stolen. It was a gift to be shared, a light that could illuminate the entire galaxy if only other species were willing to open their eyes and let it in. And now, thanks to his work, they were. 5 years passed, and the Creative Partnership Initiative grew beyond anything its founders had imagined. Partnership teams operated on hundreds of worlds, bringing together beings from across the Federation to tackle problems that had seemed unsolvable. The results were transforming galactic civilization in ways both large and small. On the water world of Oceana Prime, a partnership team developed new methods for communicating with the intelligent aquatic species that had been isolated for millennia. Human creativity, combined with Valorian linguistics and Korak engineering to create devices that could translate meaning across entirely different modes of thought. On the mining planet of Ferris 9, a team invented safer extraction methods that protected workers while increasing productivity. A human artist's observation about flowing patterns led a Mindari mathematician to discover a new approach to pressure dynamics that saved countless lives. And on Earth itself, an international center for creative partnership became the most prestigious institution in the Federation. Species that had never worked together before came to study the human approach to innovation and to contribute their own unique perspectives. Krelvax watched all of this with wonder and pride. He was no longer the uncertain diplomat who had arrived on Earth 5 years ago. He had become something else, something that had no name in any language. He was both Valorian and human, both observer and participant, both ancient and new. The High Council had offered him many promotions and honors, but he had refused them all. He preferred to remain on Earth, working with Ambassador Chen and her successors, helping to guide the partnership program as it grew. "You have changed," Ambassador Chen told him one evening as they sat together in her garden watching the sun set over Geneva. "When you first arrived, you were so rigid, so careful. Now you laugh and make jokes and take risks. You have become almost human." Krelvax considered this. "I have not become human," he said. "I have become more myself. The contact with humans has freed something in me that was always there but could not escape. Perhaps all Valorian have this potential, hidden beneath our ordered surfaces. Perhaps all species do." "That is a hopeful thought," Ambassador Chen said. "It is," Krelvax agreed. "And hope, I have learned, is the true source of creativity. Humans create because they hope for a better future. They imagine things that do not exist and work to bring them into being. That hope is what drives everything else." The sun sank below the mountains, painting the sky in colors that no language could fully describe. Krelvax sat in comfortable silence with his human friend, feeling the cool evening air and the deep peace that came from knowing he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The next day, a message arrived that would change everything once again. The High Council had made contact with a new species, one that was causing great concern across the Federation. They were called the Seekers, and they were unlike any species ever encountered. The Seekers were destroyers. They traveled from world to world, consuming resources and leaving devastation behind. They had no art, no culture, no apparent purpose beyond survival and expansion. They were creatures of pure efficiency, optimized for conquest and nothing else. The Federation had tried diplomacy, but the Seekers did not negotiate. They had tried military force, but the Seekers adapted and overcame every weapon used against them. Nothing seemed to work. The Seekers continued their advance, swallowing world after world. "The High Council requests your presence," the message said. "Your expertise in human creativity and cross-species cooperation is needed. The Seekers represent an existential threat to Federation civilization. If a solution exists, it must be found quickly." Krelvax read the message several times, feeling the weight of what was being asked. This was not a simple problem of creating gardens or improving mining techniques. This was a matter of survival for billions of beings across thousands of worlds. He went to Ambassador Chen and told her everything. She listened in silence, her face growing more serious with each detail. "How many worlds have they taken?" she asked. 47 as of the last report, and they are accelerating." Ambassador Chen stood and walked to her window, looking out at the peaceful city below. "The Federation has been at peace for so long. We have forgotten what it means to face a true threat. But humans have not forgotten. Our history is full of wars and conflicts and close calls. We have survived because we adapted, because we never gave up, because we always found new ways to fight. That is why the High Council has called for me, Krelvax said. They believe human creativity can help find a solution. Perhaps it can, Ambassador Chen said, but not creativity alone. We will need everything we have learned about partnership and cooperation. We will need every species working together as one. Within days, Krelvax was aboard a Federation ship heading to the front lines. He brought with him a team of humans selected for their exceptional ability to think in unconventional ways. They were artists and scientists, philosophers and engineers, dreamers and doers. They represented the best of human creativity. The Seekers had taken a planet called Harmony's Rest, a world known for its gardens and temples. The partnership team had created some of their finest work there. Now it was gone, reduced to bare rock by the Seekers' relentless harvesting. Krelvax studied the reports from the Federation military, trying to understand the Seekers' behavior. They were organized but not intelligent in the way Federation species were intelligent. They did not communicate or negotiate. They did not create art or build lasting structures. They simply consumed and moved on, like a fire spreading through dry forest. They are a force of nature, said Dr. Maya Santos, a human scientist who specialized in studying alien species. They are not evil or cruel. They are simply doing what their biology demands. Understanding that is the first step to stopping them. How do you stop a force of nature? Asked a Korek engineer named Thrax. You redirect it, Dr. Santos said. You cannot stop a river, but you can build channels that direct where it flows. Perhaps we can do the same with the Seekers. The team brainstormed for days, throwing out ideas and testing them against what they knew about the Seekers. Most ideas were discarded quickly. The Seekers had no culture to appeal to, no leaders to negotiate with, no weaknesses that could be exploited. But then a young human artist named Jamie spoke up. Jamie was the quietest member of the team, preferring to draw in a sketchbook while others talked, but now something in the discussion had caught attention. What if we are thinking about this wrong? Jamie asked. We keep trying to find a way to stop them or redirect them, but what if the answer is to give them what they want? Give them what they want, Thrax repeated skeptically. They want to consume everything. How does that help us? Think about it, Jamie said, sketching rapidly. The Seekers consume resources because they need them to survive and reproduce, but resources are limited. Eventually, they will run out of things to consume and die. They are trapped in a cycle they cannot escape. That is their problem, Thrax said. Our problem is that they will consume us first. But what if we could break their cycle? Jamie continued. What if we could give them a resource that never runs out, something that grows faster than they can consume it? The room fell silent as the idea sank in. It was crazy, impossible, completely impractical, but it was also the most creative suggestion anyone had made. You are talking about creating unlimited food for a species that only knows how to destroy, Krelvax said slowly. It would require technology we do not have. Not yet, Dr. Santos said, her eyes lighting up with excitement. But what if we combined what we do have? The life box technology from that inventor I heard about, scaled up 1,000,000 times. The energy collection methods from the Mindari. The biological engineering techniques from the Korek. Alone, none of these would be enough. But together. The team worked around the clock for weeks, designing what they came to call the Infinite Garden. It was a massive artificial ecosystem, designed to produce biomass at an incredible rate. It would draw energy from stars and convert it into organic matter that the Seekers could consume. The technology was unprecedented, combining innovations from a dozen species into something entirely new. It was exactly the kind of project that the Creative Partnership Initiative had been designed to produce, a solution that no single species could have imagined on their own. But would it work? Would the Seekers accept this gift, or would they simply consume it and continue their advance? Krelvax knew there was only one way to find out. The prototype Infinite Garden was built in the path of the Seekers' advance, on an uninhabited planet selected for the purpose. Then everyone retreated to a safe distance and waited. The Seekers arrived right on schedule. Their vast swarm descended on the planet, beginning their usual pattern of consumption. But when they reached the infinite garden, something unexpected happened. They stopped. Krelvax watched the sensor readings with growing amazement. The Seekers were consuming the garden's output, but they were not destroying the garden itself. They seemed to understand, on some instinctive level, that this source of food would continue to provide for them as long as it was left intact. Days passed, then weeks. The Seekers remained at the infinite garden, consuming its endless supply of biomass. Their advance toward Federation worlds stopped completely. More gardens were built and placed in the Seekers' path. Each one attracted more of the swarm, drawing them away from inhabited worlds and toward these artificial oases of unlimited resources. Within a year, the Seekers were no longer a threat. They had settled into a stable relationship with the infinite gardens, consuming without destroying, surviving without conquering. The crisis was over. The Federation celebrated Krelvax and his team as heroes. They had saved countless worlds and billions of lives. They had demonstrated the power of creative cooperation on a scale never before imagined. But Krelvax knew that the true heroes were the humans who had contributed their wild ideas and unconventional thinking. Without Jamie's suggestion of giving the Seekers what they wanted, without Dr. Santos's vision of combining technologies, without the willingness of every team member to imagine the impossible, nothing would have been achieved. He returned to Earth for the celebrations, where Ambassador Chen was waiting for him. She looked older now, her hair completely white, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. "You have done something remarkable," she said. "You have shown the entire galaxy what humans and aliens can accomplish together." "I have shown what creativity can accomplish," Krelvax corrected. "Human creativity, combined with the strengths of other species. That is what saved us. That is what will continue to save us as new challenges arise." Ambassador Chen smiled. "And to think, it all started because you wanted to understand why we make art and write poetry and sing songs. Such small things leading to such great outcomes." Krelvax thought about his journey, from the observation deck of the Eternal Harmony to this moment of triumph. He had come to study humans, and he had found something he never expected. He had found himself. "Creativity is never a small thing," he said. "It is the universe expressing itself through minds that are willing to imagine what could be. It is the force that pushes against the darkness and makes room for light. It is what makes intelligent life worth preserving." He looked up at the night sky, seeing the stars that represented the homes of countless species now working together in ways they never had before. The Creative Partnership Initiative had become the model for galactic cooperation. The infinite gardens had become symbols of what was possible when different minds came together. And humans, the young species that had puzzled and frustrated the Federation for so long, had taken their place at the center of galactic civilization. Not because they were the strongest or the oldest or the wisest, but because they had something no one else had: the gift of creative fire. Krelvax had spent his life studying that fire. Now he understood it. Not completely, because creativity could never be completely understood, but enough to know that it was the most precious thing in the universe. And thanks to his work, it was spreading. From Earth to 1,000 worlds, from humans to 100 species, the fire was catching. The galaxy was learning to create, to imagine, to hope. The Federation Diplomatic Academy would teach what Krelvax had discovered for generations to come. Human creativity, innovation, and excellence would become required subjects for every diplomat in the galaxy. Not because other species could copy what humans did, but because they could learn to value it, to partner with it, to let it inspire their own unique contributions. This was Krelvax's greatest achievement, greater even than solving the Seeker crisis. He had built a bridge between worlds, a pathway for ideas to travel from mind to mind across the vast distances of space. He had shown that the universe was not a place of isolation and competition, but of connection and cooperation. And as he stood on Earth, watching the sunset paint the sky in impossible colors, he knew that his work was far from over. There would be new challenges ahead, new problems that seemed unsolvable, new opportunities for creativity and partnership. He was ready for all of it. He had learned from the best, from a species that never stopped imagining, never stopped creating, never stopped reaching for the stars. Humanity, yeah, as the humans themselves like to say. Krelvax smiled at the crude but perfect expression. It captured everything he had learned in a way that no diplomatic report ever could. Humanity, indeed.